My name is Jenna. I'm 23 years old. As a kid, I grew up in church. I had a spiritual family. My parents were great role models, and I think so much so that sometimes I took Jesus' grace for granted, because when you grow up with it, you just think it's something that you have. I went through my childhood that way, attending church every Sunday, but not really giving much thought to it. And then as a young teen, I started attending a different church, and the sermons there really started piquing my interest. Just great messages, really engaging, really helpful information, but I was still just a Sunday churchgoer and a bedtime prayer sayer, but that was about it. Other than that, I was in control of my life. I was a perfectionist. I wanted to have the steering wheel and let God sit in the back, not the other way around. And I continued that way into my teenage years. I started making choices that weren't the best choices, and I went down a path of immorality and looked for love in the wrong places, devalued myself in the process, never thinking I was really good enough. And then I went to college and I continued on the same path. I was a Division I athlete and I studied fashion design, so not always the easiest realm to bring God into. There's a lot of sources pulling me in the wrong direction, and I continued on my downward spiral. And it ended with me developing bulimia, which I kept in the darkness because I didn't want anyone else to know what I was suffering with. I wanted a perfect facade, that I was a 3.98 student, a captain of the field hockey team. I didn't want anyone to think I was less than perfect. And I think more than that, I didn't want myself to think that I was less than perfect. So I struggled with my problem all through college, a lot of it by myself. And eventually I told my parents that I was struggling with bulimia. And they were nothing but supportive. I started going and seeing professional help, a dietitian, and everything was turning around, but I still had an empty hole. And I didn't know what it was that I needed to fill it. And for about a month, I was like, what is it that I need to do? And then I went to my dad, my spiritual mentor, and I was like, Dad, I think I really want to start doing weekly Bible readings. And he said, that's great. He said, what do you want to start with? I said, I don't know. What do you think would work best for me? And he said, I think you would really enjoy James. So I opened James, and that day, June 5th, I started reading that night in my apartment. And I broke down crying because it was so applicable to my life. It had so much meat to it and was so able to teach me and direct me. And written thousands of years ago, it had just as much weight as it did then. And from there, that's when I decided that I wanted to be baptized, is because my Christian experience up until then was like I had been sitting in a place that was beautiful, somewhere that people told me was beautiful and I knew was beautiful. But when I read the Bible for myself, I finally got to experience it with my own eyes. And that's what I love about Epic, is it's a Bible-based church that brings that to light too, and it just helps me continue my weekly readings with my dad outside of that and continue it in community on Sundays. Baptism to me means sharing my story, not being afraid of any of the brokenness that I've suffered in my past or will suffer from in the future, because we're all broken people, and helping other people who struggle with problems like I do, moving forward, to know that nobody's alone.